Hello everybody, good afternoon, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge. This is your Erik ten Hag press conference for Manchester United versus Luton, but also a bit of a big story coming out in relation to just how much money Erik ten Hag may have in relation to the, well not Erik ten Hag, but how much money Sjim Radcliffe could be pumping into Manchester United. $2 billion in addition to the $1.7 billion going to the Glazers and the shareholders. This would be a $3.7 billion investment for 25%. The numbers don't add up. We're going to talk about what Ten Hag had to say as well. Basically explaining the Mason Mount issue. Talking about he's not happy with Rashford's form, but that's not necessarily a headline because Rashford's not happy himself and he's confident he's going to bounce back. He was asked whether he trusts these players when they keep losing leads for him. But also talking about whether it's acceptable to have lost 9 games by the 10th of November in one season. We'll talk about all that in a moment, but I feel this is probably quite significant news. So Rudrish says it's bullshit. Don't forget to smash a like on the video. This is the story. I'm going to read it out to you, and it is breaking news in a sense. So Sjim Radcliffe to invest $2 billion into Manchester United. So Sjim is close to completing his 25% purchase of Manchester United, and in a best case scenario, an agreement could be reached next week. Radcliffe is finalising a deal for a minority stake. However, sporting control will come immediately with Radcliffe's Ineos forming a committee alongside Joel Glazer to make football decisions. I love this. I said this morning. Was it PJ this morning? Piss off PJ and hang around with Duncan. Or shall I call you Ant and Deck? I said this morning. PJ's going, so Sjim will have the right to sack people and buy people and he'll have total control. He will not have total control because he doesn't have total control of the club. He will have a say on the board with Joel Glazer. He will be hands-on, but this is the most important thing. He's going to pledge an initial $300 million straight away towards the club's infrastructure, and this will be in play by the end of the year. But this is only the start of a long-term project investment from Ineos. They're looking to spend $1.7 billion for the shares, which is 25%, and a $2 billion commitment over the next few years. This is consistent with what Sheikh Jassim was going to do, but he was going to buy all the club. It's consistent with what he was going to pledge to Chelsea when he was trying to buy Chelsea. Look, it's interesting. I don't intend to delve any deeper than that because it's a press conference reaction and maybe we can do it at 8 o'clock tonight. But the headline is that he will buy 25% of the club and then he will put in about £1.7 billion over whatever period of time. This is going to make a lot of fans feel excited. It still, to me, doesn't make me feel excited because, I mean, what does 1.7 billion mean? How do you buy the club? How do you buy 25% of the club for 1.25 and then put another 1.7 billion into the club? It doesn't make any sense. This news breaks when protests are planned, says Flash Talks. You know why it doesn't make sense? Because the Glazers don't care about investment into the club. The Glazers care about what's in their pocket. This financially doesn't make any sense to me because, and I'll tell you why, and then we'll do the press conference, right? He's going to give the Glazers 1.25 billion for 25%. And all the Glazers want to do is get about 6 billion and leave. Putting 1.7 billion into the club doesn't go to the Glazers. They don't care about that. They don't care about the stadium being rebuilt or the players being bought. So why is Sjim putting 1.7 billion into the club? You know what I mean? It's like, what does that do for the Glazers? It's not coming to them. And so Sjim can't say, we'll take that off the sale because that's what Sheikh Jassim tried and they didn't care about money going into the club. The Glazers want 6 billion. So Jim's going to give them 1.25. Where's the rest? Where's the other 4.75 coming from? Because you can't use the 1.7 towards that. What I'm saying is any money Sir Jim puts into the club has to be in addition to what the Glazers' end game is. I don't understand how this is going to work. And what I would say is, has Sir Jim said to the Glazers, I'm going to put 1.7 billion in, I'm going to turn the club into a £10 billion club, and you will get 6. Maybe that's what the plan is. But it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for Sir Jim to own 25% and put 1.7 billion in and only own 25%. And if he wants more than that, he's going to have to find another 5 billion to give to the Glazers. I don't know how this is going to work. But people won't look at it. People won't think about it that deep. They'll go, well, the Glazers will be happy he's putting 1.7 billion in. It's like me selling my house, somebody buying 25% of it and then building a swimming pool and a theme park in the garden. And I'm like, all I'm interested in is what I'm getting. Why am I interested in a theme park and a swimming pool in the garden? I'll have a go on it, but I'd rather have that money coming to me. So look, I would just be very wary of getting excited about that because it doesn't actually make a lot of business sense. What I would say is, and I can't lie about this, 1.7 billion going into the club is needed. And all right, it might not be a full sale and it might not be Glazers out, but 1.7 billion going into the club is needed. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to say that doesn't sound positive. 1.7 billion, I mean, it's probably only enough to rebuild Old Trafford, but you can do a lot with 1.7 billion. You can do a lot with 1.7 billion. So, look, it's not completely negative, but it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me why you'd buy 25% and then put 1.7 billion in. Unless he's never going to buy the whole club. Unless he's got a contract for 25% where he goes, I never want anything more than that. All I want to do is have a bit of an ego controlling the sporting side, and I'll put 1.7 billion in, and I'll have 25%, and we'll grow this club to a 10 billion pound business, and we'll just profit off it. I don't know. And there's a lot of if, buts, and maybes that we need to find out about this, and hopefully that will come out in the fullness of time. But I'm not going to start listening to Twitter accounts and rumours. I need straight facts. We need straight business talk, Bloomberg, Sky News, breaking down of what this deal's going to be. Because at the moment, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. As encouraging it as putting the money is, the Glazers are still there. And that's the bottom line as well. Anybody who's getting excited about this, the Glazers are still there, and that concerns me. The fans need clarity, says Melps. They do. Maybe we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's get into Erik ten Hag's press conference. And don't forget, we've got an 8 o'clock show tonight. So, Erik ten Hag press conference for the Luton game. First question, 9 defeats, Erik ten Hag. Is it acceptable to have lost so many games this early in the season? Erik said, it's about the result, and we always have to win. So it's very disappointing to have had the start to the season we've had, but it's a process and we have to manage that process. And we love the word process. The arms come out. We love the word process. We love it. If there's one thing we love over the last 10 years as United fans, we love process. We love to trust the process. We love to hide behind the process. We love to believe in the process. We love a process at Manchester United, don't we? I mean, what does it actually mean? Nothing. We've lost 9 games, but we've got to manage the process. I think the honest answer to that is we've lost 9 games because the club's a shit heap at the moment, and until we actually change the structure, there's going to be more losses. I think, but I'm going to go through these questions, and I think you'll all agree with me. I don't think Ten Hag can answer honestly any of these questions. I'll go through them all, and you tell me how else he can answer it. He's got to play the game. I've played the game. He's got to do the PR answer, because if he answers that question honestly, 9 defeats already is not acceptable, is it? The honest answer is no, it's not. We're playing shit. I've got loads of injuries. The players I'm playing probably aren't as good as the teams above us. What do you expect? We are where we deserve to be. We've lost 3 games out of 4 in the Champions League. We've lost, 5 in the Premier League. We're not playing very well. There's reasons for that, and we're probably going to lose a lot more games. But if he says that, he'll be sacked within 10 minutes. He's got to spin a positive, and that's the process. So you use the process. You trust the process, as Big says. His next question was, do you trust these players who keep losing focus? And this was from Simon Stone, I think, and it was a very good question because it was very specifically about you're 2-0 up the other night. You've got 10 men. You're not the first team in the world to be 2-0 up with 10 men and still win the game, and you end up conceding 4 goals. Can you trust these players when they keep losing focus? And there are numerous examples of these players losing focus. This season, last season, Liverpool, Brighton, it keeps happening all the time. So Ten Hag said, we have proved before that these players can be trusted. We showed it against Fulham at the weekend, and we showed it against Brentford, that we can overcome difficult situations. He can't answer that question. That's the biggest... He cannot answer that question truthfully. Do you trust these players who keep losing focus? No. You've seen it. I've seen it. They're bottle jobs. This is why my job's so difficult. He cannot answer that question like that. Imagine if Ten Hag went, good question. No, I can't really. As soon as anything goes wrong, they're absolute bottle jobs. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Simon. You have a go tomorrow. You manage them against Luton. If Luton score first, watch what happens. They'll just fucking give in. He can't answer it like that. He has to answer it in the way that he's answered it. And there will be people going, what a load of bollocks. What, Brentford, we were lucky. We just, they were parking the bus and we got 2 late goals. Fulham was a scrap and we got a goal. That's not truth. That's not proof of us being able to deal with difficult situations. Wednesday's a proof of not being able to deal with difficult situations. I mean, how do you want Ten Hag to answer that properly though? You know the answer. I know the answer. You can't trust these players all the time. There are certain times you can trust them. There's a lot of times where they buckle under the pressure. Ten Hag himself spoke about this after the Liverpool game last year. He spoke about mentality. He spoke about psychological issues in relation to dealing with pressure. He's already spoken about this. He's already highlighted this. So, but he's never going to answer that question, and he shouldn't answer that question truthfully. Ralph Rangnick would say it as it is, but Ralph Rangnick had nothing to lose. Maddison, he had a job coming up for Austria. He's always going to get a job in football, and he wasn't a long-term manager anyway. He was talking as a prospective director of football, and they screwed him over. The manager of a football club cannot sit there and say, I don't trust my players, because they will absolutely not play for him and get him the sack tomorrow. So he has to speak, he has to play the game. He was asked about Marcus Rashford and whether he's very happy with his form. I thought this was a good, honest answer from Ten Hag, actually, because he could have answered it in a different way. And I think he was very honest on this one. He said, oh, look, I'm not happy with Rashford, but he's not happy with himself. He's not in the best of form, but I do believe he'll be back. He's got high standards. We know what those high standards are. And when the team's playing better, he will improve and get better. And that can happen at any time. So, look, I like the fact that he said he's not happy with Rashford, because Rashford's not happy with himself. You have to acknowledge the fact that this is a player that is, one of our better players who's not performing well. But it's not negative for Ten Hag to say he's not happy with Rashford's form, because he knows Rashford's not happy. Sometimes you have to accept the truth to move on. But what is very clear with Ten Hag is that he will keep picking him. He might not be happy with Rashford's form, but he knows Rashford's not happy, and they're going to keep picking each other and backing each other and working until it clicks. And Ten Hag is convinced it will happen. I'm convinced it will happen. I suppose the flip side is it good management to keep picking a player, waiting for them to hit good form when we're in November and the season started in August? How much longer can we wait? And it's interesting, isn't it? It's almost like, when you're flipping a coin and it keeps landing on tails. It's going to flip. It's going to land on a head at some point, but you flip again and it's a tail. I think there is an inevitability that Marcus Rashford will start playing well. The question is, how long do you wait? Well, he's already waited 3 months. And actually, some would say he ended last season badly. So you could say that this bad vein of form for Rashford is actually March, April, May, August, September, October. It's 6 months. But I do agree with Ten Hag that he will start playing well at some point, and he's been playing him for so long. I think he's in. Look, I'm not Ten Hag. Ten Hag really, 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 really has Marcus Rashford as his most important player. It's clear. He's given him the money. He's given him the support. He's never going to drop him. And if he does drop him, that's, how long are you dropping him for? I don't really get what people expect from Ten Hag with Rashford, because it's his star player. And people say drop him, he's not playing well. But when you drop a star player, you're bringing them back. So why drop them in the first place? I think it's the question is, how long are we going to have to wait? Now, Luton aren't very good. The problem is, if Rashford plays well tomorrow and scores 2 goals, everyone thinks he's back, then it's international break. And we all know that the international break is a bloody waste of time when it comes to club football, because you may as well reset yourself again because there's no momentum. But I do think he'll start scoring at some point. DK says, my financial background at uni screams investment rather than full takeover. Why would you take an initial investment, make it grow in value, then buy it? Glazers have played the game. Jim is naive or he's lying, says DK. We're just talking about this. If you've tuned in a little bit late, there's talk of a 2 billion investment line from Ineos and sjim over the future for 25%. I agree with DK. I've invested in things in the past, before before I did the United stand. I mean, I'm not talking like hundreds of thousands. I'm talking about, investing in shares and stuff like that. And I agree with DK. You don't always buy a business. Sometimes you invest in something and put money into it with a long-term projection. You're not looking to buy it all. I think what Sjim's trying to do here is just increase the value of Manchester United and make them better. And the reward for him could be a vanity project. As I said before, he might just want to be the guy that is associated with getting Man United back. And he might be taking a gamble. He might be saying, look, I'll put 2 billion in and I'll just keep 25%. I don't need anything more than 25% because I've signed a contract with the Glazers where they're going to give me footballing control forever. And I don't need to own 100%. I mean, has anybody ever thought of it like that? What if he's not going to buy any more of the club? What if it's always going to be 25%, but the contract he has with the Glazers, because let's be honest, the Glazers don't want to run the club. They just want to make money from the club. So what if Sjim said, right, I'm going to put 2 billion in. I'm going to give you 1.25 billion now. You keep the majority ownership. I want it in writing that I'm involved in the footballing side. And over the next few years, I will take the credit for getting Man United back where they are, which is enough for me. And you will make money off it. Everybody's happy. And of course, the 2 billion I put in, I'll make back when Man United are back where they need to be and we get the TV deals and everything like that. This 2 billion that's going in will have to come back. It will. I don't think there's any... The only way money was going into this club and never coming back was if we got bought by Qatar or Abu Dhabi or something like that. I think any money that goes in will surely come out at some point in the future. But how it's going to work, I don't know. Get your comments in. Let me know. He was also asked about Luton. He said there's no easy game. We've got to play at the best level. I mean, I'm just going to brush over that because at the end of the day, Luton at home is the easiest game of the season. Let's not pretend that Luton at home isn't an easy game. It is. You've got to respect them. And they can beat you. But let's not pretend that Luton at home isn't an easy game. But he can't say that. So he's got to be respectful, of course. He was asked about Johnny Evans and what the latest is with Johnny Evans. He said, Johnny Evans, they don't know the full extent of his injury yet. So if you're Northern Irish, we don't know whether he's out of that game. I didn't even know he was still an international, Johnny Evans. I really didn't. But he's not going to be playing tomorrow against Luton. So Johnny Evans is out tomorrow, but may be involved in international duty, but he's definitely out of the Luton game. He was also asked about Mason Mount with regards to what's going on with Mason Mount. This was a good question, actually. So he was asked about Mason Mount. He says, look, he's played at 8. He's played as a number 10. He's played on the right wing and he's made no impact, which was quite blunt, but true. Is he reaching the expectations that you expected, or have those expectations changed? Erik ten Hag said, look, my expectations of Mason Mount haven't changed. He got an injury at the worst possible time, right at the start of the season after pre-season. That stops the integration process. And now he's stuck in a position where he's got to fight back. And there are other players who have taken their chance. And the commentator, the journalist said, well, he's not starting games for you. And obviously you've spent this money on him. And Ten Hag just said, well, look, he's got to fight for his place. He has started some games. He started against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. But while he's been out, other players have come in and took their chance. I mean, I disagree with that. Have other players taken their chance? I mean, with all due respect, McTominay's got some assists and goals. Bruno's the captain. Eriksen's done all right. But can we honestly sit there and say that Eriksen, McTominay and Bruno are playing that well that Mason Mount can sit on the bench and go, you know what, I understand why I'm here. You know, they're tearing it up at the moment. I mean, I go back to the first question. We've lost 9 games this season already. Can you honestly sit there and say that other players have taken their chances? Can you honestly say that McTominay, Eriksen and Bruno are streets ahead of Mount? Well, they are from what we've seen of Mount, but what I'm trying to say is that, again, I don't think Ten Hag can answer this question honestly. It's a brand new signing that he spent £55 million on, and when somebody says, has he reached the expectations that you expected? Of course he bloody well hasn't. He spent £55 million on a player and gave him the number 7 shirt. Of course, he's way under the expectations. Do you think Ten Hag spent £55 million on his star summer signing and gave him the number 7 shirt, expecting him to be sat on the bench behind McTominay, Eriksen and Bruno? Of course he bloody well didn't. But he can't answer that question in that way. The bottom line is, every time Mason Mount comes on, he doesn't make an impact. So McTominay, Eriksen and Bruno are playing ahead of him, not because they've taken their chance. We're not winning every game with those three, but because they're playing better than him. That's the truth. So the truth is Mason Mount has not reached the expectation that Ten Hag wanted, but he cannot answer the question that way. McTominay, Eriksen and Bruno are playing ahead of Mount because they're better than Mount at the moment, but they're not, it's not like Mount, every time he comes on, he does nothing. So the problem with Mason Mount is that he's just not playing well. Now, that could be because he had an injury, of course. Of course it could. But he is not knocking on... My point is, he's not knocking on the door, is he? Sometimes your star striker gets an injury, and by the time he's back, the reserve striker's scoring a goal every week. You can't drop them. But the star striker's just waiting for his chance, and he's good enough, and you're like, well, you can't pick him because the understudy's doing really, really well, but we've got this striker raring to go. That's not what we've got with Mason Mount, is it? We haven't got a midfield that's tearing up the joints, and we haven't got a player on the bench who's knocking on the door waiting for his chance. We've got a midfield that's doing mediocre, and we've got Mason Mount, who every time he comes on is mediocre. That's the truth with Mason Mount, and ultimately, it might be harsh, but he is not reaching the expectations of us or Ten Hag. Number 7, £55 million. Tell me what his best position is and tell me what his future is at Man United. Because at the moment, I feel that Mason Mount is in a very similar situation to Jadon Sancho last season, where you go, that's a good player, but tell me where he starts for Man United. And there's a lot of you that like Sancho. But I was saying this, I like Sancho. In the summer, people were saying, oh, Sancho on tour looks great. And I was like, well, where will he play? It will always be Rashford. It will always be Bruno. It will always be the striker, and it will always be Anthony. Sancho, as good as you think he might be, where does he play? And that's the problem I've got with Mason Mount now, which is incredible because Ten Hag didn't buy Sancho. So that's an excuse. Well, he doesn't have to pick him because he didn't buy him. He might not fancy him. But with Mount, he's paid the money for him. It's his player. Where does he play? Where does Mason Mount play in that United side? Because the only place I think we bought him for was to play with Bruno in a midfield 3 with a holding midfielder. And I think that's massively naive anyway. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. I don't know where Mason Mount's going to fit in. And I'm somebody who likes Mason Mount. Like, we're having an open, honest conversation like we have all the time on this channel. And I like Mason Mount. This is not in any way, get out of my club, you're a load of shit, go back to Chelsea. I liked him at Chelsea. He fell off a little bit last year, but I think he's a good player. I just don't know where he fits in. And what Mason Mount's got to do, and only Mason Mount can do this, it's not on Ten Hag, it's not on us, it's not on his teammates. When he comes on, he's got to create a problem. I don't know where he fits into the team, but if he comes on for 20 minutes against Copenhagen and plays really well as a 10 or a right winger or an 8, then you've got a decision to make. Because you're like, oh, he's knocking on the door, but where does he fit in? That's what he's got to do. At the moment, he's not knocking on the door and I don't know where he fits in. Why is Amrabat not getting much game time, says Patrick? I think Amrabat's got the same problem. I think it's a great question. Obviously, I'm not Erik Ten Hag. I feel like I get tougher questions from Ten Hag. I mean, where was the question about fucking Varane? No, not that we want to fuck Varane, but I mean, it's like, there should have been a question about Varane. Maybe it's going to come in the embargoed section tonight, but I would like to have been talking about that on this show. It's a mounting problem, says Alpha Gaming. But look, the Amrabat question's really, really good. And I've got a really good answer about Amrabat, and it goes like this. Amrabat, in my opinion, is being sort of... Look, Amrabat. The problem with Amrabat is he ticks every single box to be a scapegoat. And box number 1, foreign player. That's it. Foreign player. That's it. Let's go after Amrabat. Why did Ten Hag, a foreign coach, bring in Amrabat, a foreign player? We know people like to pile in on this. I think with Amrabat, It's so simple. I think I tweeted it yesterday and I can't remember what I said. Let's see if we can find it, because it really, for me, broke down exactly what the problem is with Amrabat. And it's so simple. It won't take me long to find it. Where was it? I retweeted it. Here we go. I tweeted this yesterday afternoon. It's on my Twitter at Mark Goldbridge. Amrabat criticism is incredible. Signed late, signed injured, played at left back, not been given a chance to adapt. And I think that is a very clear, distinctive, factual, evidenced way of that why there's an issue. He had no pre-season. We signed him really late. He was also injured. We then played him out of position at left back, and he's had zero time to settle. So he's had no pre-season. We bought him injured, or loaned him injured. We put him at left back because we had no left back, and the team is in dismay. It's really difficult for a young player to come into a team when it's low on confidence and a mess. It's also very difficult for a new signing to come into a team and perform. The only player that's half performing, certainly in the Champions League, is Højlund. But Højlund's a striker. If you give him service, it's about whether he can finish. Onana is struggling, new signing. Mount, we've just spoken about, struggling. And Amrabat struggling. And they all play in positions where, you know, you can't score goals to alleviate the pressure on yourself. And we know Højlund's not getting any service in the Premier League because he hasn't scored yet. But Amrabat and Mount are midfielders, and the midfield isn't really balanced. And Onana is a goalkeeper in a defence that's not balanced. So none of our signings are doing very well this summer, apart from Højlund. And a striker really is just about scoring goals, isn't it? And, you know, there are games when Højlund is in a graveyard shift as well. So I think that judging Mount, Amrabat and Onana at the moment is very difficult, because they're playing in a team that's lost 9 games already. It's not their fault. And it's just Man United is just very, very unsettled at the moment. Do you think that Sir Jim Ratcliffe would invest that much without knowing he can acquire the rest of the Glazers' shares? He isn't naive, says Red Dev. Red Dev, great question. So we're talking about this €2 billion $2 billion investment from Sir Jim Ratcliffe, which is good investment. But when does it happen? As for your question, why would you invest $2 billion if you weren't going to get the whole club? I would flip that round and say, why would you invest $2 billion when you're going to have to spend another 4 or 5 billion to buy the Glazers? You know, let me just break this down for you, okay? The Glazers want 6 billion. They're getting 1.2 at the moment for 25%. That's not 6. At some point, Sir Jim's got to give the Glazers 6 billion. And on top of that, he's putting 2 billion in. So he's putting 8 billion into Man United. We're getting very technical here, but don't think that that 2 billion is anything to do with the Glazers. They don't give a shit about people putting money in the club. They care about what they get. They've just refused 5 billion from Sheikh Jassim. They could have had 5 billion in their pocket and walked away. They've just refused that. So don't for 1 minute think that they're going to accept Sir Jim giving them, 2 or 3 billion if he puts 2 billion in. Makes no sense. If Sir Jim's end game is to buy the club, doesn't matter how much he invests into the club, he's still going to have to find another 4 or 5 billion to give the Glazers to get rid of it. Now, if he's going to do that, show us how that's going to work. But if he is going to do that, how the hell would you give the Glazers 5 billion and then have another 2 billion going in? You've just valued United at a 7 billion project, which they're not. There's a lot of hidden stuff going on here. There's a lot to think through, and it's not as simple as going, ooh, 2 billion's going in from Sir Jim. That money will, I presume, have to go back at some point. How is he going to get the Glazers out? I'm just speculating here, and we will bring you the facts as they come out, and we will own those facts as soon as they come out. But to me, I think what DK said is really interesting. What if Sir Jim's got no intention of buying all the club? What if he's happy with an investment for a certain percentage where he has a very strong say on the footballing side and leaves the commercial side to the Glazers, knowing that if the football side's successful, the commercial side will take care of itself? He gets 25%, he retains control of the football side, he puts 2 billion in, and that 25% will just expand anyway, and he'll make his money back that way. We don't know. We don't know what this is. And as Manchester United fans, when we've had, nearly 20 years of lies and bullshit, I'm not going to sit here and go, woohoo, 2 billion's going into the club. I don't think 2 billion's enough, by the way. 2 billion won't even be enough. 2 billion is probably what it's going to cost to renovate Old Trafford. So 2 billion's not actually enough for United. It sounds ridiculous, but 2 billion is not enough, which is incredible. It just shows you the volume of damage the Glazers have done when 2 billion is not enough. Look, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but I'm not going to get excited about something we know next to nothing about. And what if the 2 billion's over the next 10 years? We don't know. What if the 2 billion's coming in by May? What if the 2 billion isn't going to go in? What if it? There's so many if, buts, and maybes. I'm encouraged that there is talk of major investment, but that's an open goal anyway. You can't come to United and go, new CEO and everything's fine. There has to be major investment. But what this pathway for Sjim is doesn't make any sense. As I said, if he's going to pay the Glazers off in 3 years and give them 6 billion, and then he's putting 2 billion in himself, that's 8 billion quid. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And can I just say, United's value is not 5 billion. We're not worth 5 billion quid. We're worth about 4. So who knows? We await further clarification. We really, really do. And look, I hope that to Sir Jim Radcliffe, this isn't about money. It's about passion. It's a vanity project. I hope that's what it is. Because if it's a vanity project like Abu Dhabi with Man City, profit really doesn't come into it. So I hope that's what it's all about. If there's any business angle here, and there may well be because Ineos has got shareholders, if there's any business angle here, I'm terrified. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But there will be people in our fan base who start cheering because, they're basically getting info from the Glazers and they're going to start going, this is great, this is great. Anything coming from the Glazers is spin because all they care about is their pocket. You will get some people in the fan base who go, yeah, well, this is just what we wanted, 2 billion going in. It's not what we wanted. We wanted a full sale and the Glazers out. So there's a lot more info to come. I would say put the handbrake on and observe. The traffic lights are still on red for me. I'm not driving through it. It's very dangerous. I'm going to wait and see what happens. I want clarity. I want a timeline. We might not get it, but we've been lied to before. The owners of this football club tried to take us into a Super League behind our back. I don't trust a word that comes out of the Glazers' arse because they talk out of it. Thanks everyone for watching. We are back at 8 o'clock. It's Friday. It's Friday. We love the 8 o'clock show. I'll be running up that hill like Kate Bush for the 8 o'clock show with no problem. Love that song. Before I get down the pub, actually, I've got EAFC, Man United Career Mode as well. 3:30, I'll be live for that. If you want to join me for that, when the stream ends, it will take you over to the live chat. Just give us a subscribe or whatever, and you'll get a notification when I go live at 3:30. Thanks everyone for watching. You're absolute legends. Lots going on, of course. Take care, and I'll speak to you all in a bit. Thanks for watching.